Finally, the biggest challenge of all, the challenge of being socialists in America in the 1990s. If we believe in the continuing relevance of democratic socialism, it will not do to have socialism, the word, in our name, in our title, and little more than a list of various kinds of reforms in our program and outreach literature. Naturally, we work day to day for reforms, sometimes even rather small-scale reforms. But our vision has to be bold and radical. Our vision has to challenge power. Perhaps we should draw inspiration and courage from the movements for democracy in the East. They are challenging a ruling class of communist bureaucrats and technocrats. The equivalent ruling class here is a thoroughly capitalist corporate elite. We ought to be challenging our ruling class with the same verve and the same determination as the dissident movements of the East. They want to break the dictatorial grip of a bureaucratic elite. We want to break the dictatorial grip of the corporate elite, which extends to so many aspects of our lives, the so-called means of production, our economy, the media, even the supposedly democratic political process itself. The parallel between the two elites, capitalist and communist, needs to be stressed. The corporate elite of America, for example, they are our economic planners. They decide how investment will be made. They decide what factories will be closed, moved, so on, or whether all investment will be simply in speculation. They are also our censors, deciding what forms of expression to allow out there through their sponsorship. I would just mention one little example here, which is very important to me personally, and that is the possible demise of Ms. Magazine, which has not been in trouble financially over all these years because of its small circulation. Its circulation is very large. It's been in trouble because advertisers didn't like the editorial line. That's not capitalist decision-making. That's not bottom line kind of decision-making. That's straight-out ideological censorship. Our program has to go beyond reform, beyond the redistribution of wealth and opportunity, to the redistribution of power. Fortunately, the vulgar, arrogant behavior of the overclass, so well represented by the Forbeses and the Helmsleys, the Trumps and so forth, makes this point easier and easier to get across. So we are, and we need to make it clearer, that just as there are movements for democracy all over the world, so are we also a movement for democracy. Even George Bush applauds democracy movements when they're sufficiently far away, in Poland, in Hungary, in East Germany. Well, we are the democracy movement of America. I put it that way because I want to end by emphasizing that we are part of the epochal vision that I began with. That possibility for the first time in human history of devoting the collective wealth and technology and intelligence of the world to the service of human need and desire. This possibility rests in our hands. Not in ours alone, fortunately, but certainly in ours also. We have a role to play, tiny, but not so tiny that we can afford to minimize or slight it even in our own minds. This is not the time to shrink back, to retrench, to think small, to lose heart. For us, unlike the intellectuals of the State Department, history has not ended. To be a socialist is to step into history and to become an agent of history. And to do that is to accept the fact that responsibility does not always come with power, but that it is still responsibility. I know, to come down to earth a bit, the challenges seem so vast and enormous. The day-to-day realities we face of trying to raise money, recruitment, decision-making over what are often scarce resources often seems to be all we can cope with. We are so small. We are so weak. Collectively, as an organization, we are absurdly tiny. Individually, we know ourselves to be limited. Too often, we are overwhelmed by our own lives, our jobs, our families, our inevitable life crises. We do our best, but we do get crabby. We get discouraged. We get plain tired. But we have a resource. We do have a secret source of strength. And I'll tell you what it is, and it's appropriate that this be just about the last thing I say in my role as co-chair of this D.S.A, because it sums up one of the most important things I've learned in my 8 years in this role. Years that have given me a chance to get to know many of you as friends as well as comrades. That resource is in this room. That secret strength is in ourselves. I know how hard you all work, how much of yourselves you give to this organization and its vision of a just and peaceful world. I know because I've seen you in action in your hometowns, which range from Maine to Montana, from San Diego to Syosset, I'll include it. And I am deeply impressed and inspired by you. If we treasure that collective resource we have in each other, that is, if we support and respect each other and listen carefully to each other, even when we disagree, which will be often probably, even when we're gripped by the urgency of our own particular views, then I think we will begin to set a good model of democratic socialism ourselves and find the strength we need. And this leads me to the very last point I want to make on the relevance of socialism, democratic socialism, and why we will continue to be its standard bearers. Socialism, real socialism, is more than an idea. It is not just a particular kind of system, not just a particularly good scheme for organizing things. It is ultimately something that we carry within ourselves, a kind of moral alignment, an alignment that puts us always on the side of the downtrodden, the oppressed, the neglected, as opposed to the powerful, the overly comfortable, or the smug. What does it mean to be a socialist? What does it really mean when you take away for a moment all the possible debates and the theory and the politics and the analysis? It means that you have made a commitment to uphold the weak against the strong, to uphold the oppressed against the bigoted, to uphold the workers against the bosses, and the poor against the rich. It means that whoever you are, of whatever sex or color or occupation or kind of life you lead, that you have taken a side in this life. It is certainly not the fashionable side, and maybe not even for a little while to come the winning side, but it is by any standard of human decency the right side. Thank you.
We will take a short break, and then it's more from this annual meeting of the Democratic Socialists of America.